It's game week. Brian Kelly gets us set for LSU, USC in Vegas. It's Locked on LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Glad to have you aboard with us here. Thanks for making us your first listen. We are free, available wherever you get podcasts, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe and let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here every single day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Brian Kelly had his Monday press conference, as will be the custom heretofore until about December. Now, I guess next week is a little caveat because Monday's Labor Day, so they'll have the press conference on Tuesday. But after that, it'll be every Monday of game weeks for LSU here until December, basically. And so Brian Kelly has the opportunity to recap the previous game and preview the one ahead. And because there was no game last week, it was all about looking ahead to the USC Trojans. And I want to cover a lot of ground. Brian Kelly's thoughts on Garrett Nussmeier, Miller Moss, the similarities and how they may lead their team. We'll get to that. A final assessment of this defense and if they're ready to go. And I got some thoughts on that and what they're going to face against Lincoln Riley and this Trojan offense. But I want to start with an injury report, which is where Brian Kelly began on Monday. And he started with an update on LSU receiver Chris Hilton, who's the one player we're holding our.
From an injury standpoint, we have one guy that is questionable, and that's Chris Hilton. He has a bone bruise. He is working through that process, but today he'll be listed in that category. Probable is would be Frazier, our offensive guard. Those are the two right now that would show up on our injury report relative to this week.
So there's a lot of good there to start with. First of all, the last time Brian Kelly gave an injury report, there were 4 players. He also included Sage Ryan with a grade 1 hamstring and West Weeks with a foot injury. Well, a sprained foot. The great news is if you don't mention either of those guys, they're ready to go. And my assumption here, and by the way, we got our game notes at the press conference on Monday, and there was no depth chart. Just to get that out there, a lot of times when you get the game notes, which is a packet of 30 sheets of paper, front and back, all 8-point font, and just a gobs of information that they give to the media. Helps with the broadcast. A lot of then, if you're covering the team during the week, a lot of stats and interesting tidbits and info, bio on all the players. Anyway. A lot of times in the past there have been depth charts, and I think a lot of coaches have stopped putting depth charts in there. So some of the things we might have been interested in, we didn't get the answer. But without getting the depth chart, we are assuming Sage Ryan is going to be a starting cornerback, and then obviously West Weeks is someone who Blake Baker has talked about openly being considered a starter, and we've seen that in some of the team periods that we played. It's not to say that the first defensive snap West Weeks will be on the field. I think it depends what the situation is defensively for LSU, but I think you're going to see Perkins, Penn, and both Weeks brothers. I think you're going to see all 4. Now, after those 4, it gets a little question. But anyway, those 2 did mention, so they're good to go. And then Miles Frazier said is probable. If Frazier doesn't go, Brian Kelly said it would be Tyree Adams. I think that's an interesting tidbit there. Now, at the last practice where we had media availability, Frazier was not there because of the ankle injury, and we got to see Tyree Adams at right guard. So clearly Brian Kelly saw enough there, Frazier at right guard, or Brad Davis saw enough of Frazier there at right guard to be okay with that in this situation. Tyree Adams at right guard if Frazier's unable to go. So, look, we're all assuming LSU is going to be healthy on that offensive line. Their first 5 will go. But what we've learned here is that Tyree Adams, who has spent the bulk of fall camp working as Will Campbell's backup at left tackle, the second-year player out of St. Aug, is that he's effectively LSU's 6th lineman. So if anybody goes down, they're comfortable with him playing tackle or guard, left or right. So if anybody goes down, Adams is the next one in, with the caveat being center, of course. If you do have an injury at center, it looks like Cohen Eccles, the freshman, would be next up, or would they slide Garrett Dellinger in maybe the center and then put Tyree Adams at guard? Hopefully these are hypotheticals that we don't have to see play out, but Miles Frazier is a guy who was a freshman All-America at FIU, is now a 3-year starter at LSU, and I think we're all hoping he stays healthy and is ready to go against USC. And that great LSU offensive line is at their best on Sunday night. Chris Hilton, as Brian Kelly said, is the one that's questionable. And if Chris Hilton can't go, Brian Kelly did mention Kyle Parker would be his replacement. Kyle Parker, the second-year player, part of that talented receiver class of a season ago that had guys like Shelton Sampson, the 5-star, Jaylen Brown, who, if you were watching Florida State, Georgia Tech this past weekend, you saw Jaylen Brown play a ton of football for Florida State in that game. Kai Preon, who's obviously hit the portal as well. It's a very talented receiver class. And Kyle Parker had a fantastic fall camp. If you're not familiar, he's a second-year player who wears number 12 and is a guy that they trust to play a lot of different roles at a lot of the different receiver spots, I should say, and is a guy who could be the next one up there and seems to be the one that sort of graduated and is emerging a bit. So it's not to say you wouldn't see other guys. Brian Kelly also mentioned by name guys like Aaron Anderson and Xavier Thomas. I just think they're a little different from what we saw here in fall camp. You know, when they went to Xavier Thomas, they ran a lot of jet sweeps. They ran bubbles with Xavier Thomas, a lot of quick hitters near the line of scrimmage to get him the ball in space. And I would say the same for Aaron Anderson. But Kyle Parker showed the ability, to stretch the field a bit and to go over the middle. So it'll be interesting. Hopefully Chris Hilton's good to go. And I'll reiterate something that I've said often, and this is a prediction that whether you want to take it to heart or not is, up to you. But I think Kyron Lacey and CJ Daniels lead LSU in receptions and receiving yards. But I think Chris Hilton, provided he's healthy, leads LSU in touchdowns. Look, when you look at what LSU had a season ago, you're replacing 150 receptions and well over 2,000 yards. 2,800 yards really is what you're 2,700 yards is what you're replacing. 150 receptions and about 2,700 receiving yards. So how do you divvy those up? I think Kyron Lacey, who had 30 catches for just under 600 yards a year ago, probably has a season that looks like Malik Neighbors did in 2022. Right at about 70 catches, a little over 1,000 yards. I think that's very doable for Kyron Lacey. And I think the other 100 or so catches probably largely get divvied up with the other two guys I mentioned, CJ Daniels and Chris Hilton. I just think Hilton has more of that Brian Thomas ability. Remember, I'm not saying he's Brian Thomas. What I'm saying is, while Malik Neighbors had 89 catches for nearly 1,600 yards, Brian Thomas led the country in receiving touchdowns because he could stride those long legs and he had big size and speed and had the big play potential. And I think Chris Hilton has every bit of that. We saw it from literally the first catch of his career in that bowl game against Kansas State where he caught the deep touchdown at the end of that game. So I do think if Chris Hilton is healthy, he's probably the guy that leads LSU in receiving touchdowns this year because of his game-breaking and big play ability. But here's hoping we don't have to find out about receiver depth on Sunday or at all throughout the season, because you got three very good ones at the top. I mean, speaking of CJ Daniels, ESPN put out a list of the top 100 newcomers, transfers, and freshmen, and CJ Daniels was on the list, and justifiably so. 1,000-yard receiver a season ago at Liberty, has the size and the physicality that will translate from that G5 to the SEC. And the other thing that's so impressive about Daniels is we've gone through all our practice reports. So often he was Garrett Nussmeier's security blanket. When we'd see those team periods, if it was 3rd and 8 and Garrett Nussmeier needed a first down, he was going to CJ Daniels over the middle. And I think that's probably something you'll see a lot on Sunday as well. When the Tigers have to have it, don't be surprised if they go to number 4. But here's open number 3. Chris Hilton will be ready to go. But man, Brian Kelly's got this team healthy. Kelly also noted that there are no other absences. Everyone is available, so nothing academic, nothing behavior, discipline. I mean, I was reminded of this earlier today from my colleague Charles Hannegriff. LSU played that game against BYU in 2017, and there were 20-some-odd players that were unavailable, either due to injury or suspension or whatever it might have been in that season opener. Far cry when you're going to travel your entire roster for this USC game and have everyone available except maybe Chris Hilton. Here's hoping Chris will be able to go. LSU is certainly going to travel Garrett Nussmeier. They're going to lean heavily on him, as will USC lean on Miller Moss. Brian Kelly's thoughts on the two quarterbacks when we return. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Man, I am happy to tell you about our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. Great new sponsor here on Locked on LSU. You know, for years, I would start my show, my radio show, my 3-hour daily radio show with a 5 Hour Energy. My show starts at 3 o'clock Central, about 2:55. I'd pop it. And the best part about 5 Hour Energy, it's easy because it's a shot. You can take it very quickly. It's not like you have to sip a cup of coffee over a long period of time or drink an energy drink with all the calories. There's no sugar in 5 Hour Energy. And the thing that helped me tremendously with it is it gave me intense focus to be able to get through a 3-hour show, but I never got the jitters or the crash. So I would just get intensely focused, and that would allow me to get through a 3-hour radio show. So for whatever it may be, maybe a long day of tailgating, maybe you got a long day of traveling out to Las Vegas, maybe you're going to be hanging out at the casinos after a day of watching the football game on Sunday night. You're going to be out in Vegas. Of course, 5 Hour Energy can help you get through it. If it's the work day, you need to pick me up after lunch, you need to tackle a to-do list, maybe before a workout. There's tons of reasons to use 5 Hour Energy. And we have an awesome opportunity here for our listeners on Locked on LSU. If you go to 5hourenergy.com, that's the number 5, 5hourenergy.com. You can get some 5 Hour Energy product today, and you can use my promo code, which is Locked on CFB. Spell it out, Locked on CFB, and you'll get 20% off your order. This offer is only valid until September the 30th. On one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders either. So go to 5hourenergy.com today and use the code LOCKEDONCFB. College football is back, and the Locked On College Football podcast kicks off the action with a live season preview at 7 Eastern, 6 Central on Tuesday, August the 20th, the Locked On College Football 24/7 streaming YouTube channel. It's a 4-part series, covers each of the 4 major conferences with discussions on the ACC, Big 10, Big 12, SEC, teams that have a shot at the expanded college football playoffs. I'm part of it as well. And I might mention that August the 20th already happened. So this is old copy, but that college football podcast is still there. It's a great show. I watched it. If you want to get caught up on the entirety of college football before the season starts, great way to do it. So go to Locked On College Football, wherever you get your podcast, or of course on YouTube. All right. Glad you're here. Brian Kelly, again, with his weekly press conference, getting us all ready for USC. And naturally, the conversation was going to steer toward the quarterbacks. And if you're not new to the podcast, you understand we've talked about this plenty. It's almost odd, y'all, how similar Garrett Nussmeier and Miller Moss are. I mean, I was doing a USC show on Monday night, and I was thinking of it this way. What if I said, man, I'm just going to redact the name. Really excited about the quarterback. I mean, this is a guy who waited his turn. Class of 2021, high 4-star, tons of football IQ. Waited his turn, sat behind a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, finally got his chance to start in a bowl game, led his team to a win, threw for over 300 yards. He's got everything you want. Finally his turn to take over the reins. 6'2", 200-pounder, NFL arm, can make all the throws, great leader as well, a lot of moxie. You got to love this guy under center. I just described Garrett Nussmeier, but I also just described USC quarterback Miller Moss. I don't think people really understand how deeply intertwined, how deeply similar these two quarterbacks are, and then in the state where these two programs are. So Brian Kelly knows he's got his hands full. Miller Moss threw for nearly 400 yards and 6 touchdowns in the bowl game against Louisville, the Holiday Bowl, after last season when, of course, Caleb Williams had opted out. Garrett Nussmeier threw for nearly 400 yards in the bowl game last year against Wisconsin when Jaden Daniels had opted out. Brian Kelly had a thought on both signal callers. First, BK on Miller Moss. Yeah,
I think, he was the MVP of their bowl game, and rightfully so. I thought he played extremely well. And so you're really taking a lot of, what they did in the bowl game, because, you've got a couple of weeks to prepare, right? And they had some time to really kind of settle in on what they felt, his comfort level is. Now he's grown from there. He's had a spring practice, and he's had, another 2.5 weeks. So, there's going to be more to the offense. But, you're going to take what, Coach Riley has been successful with, and then you're going to look at their offensive structure and certainly, begin to build your plan accordingly. He does some things a little bit different than Caleb. He's not as a freelance player, but, so does Nussmeier. He's not Jaden Daniels. So I think they defend us in a similar fashion, where they look at Nussmeier and what he did in the bowl game, and they kind of attack us the same way. So I think we're both in, kind of a similar space relative to how we build our defensive game plans.
Yeah, and it's not just the similarities with the age, with the size, with the experience level playing in the bowl game. It's also stylistically. I mean, look, Miller Moss has played in 12 career games, 2 games in 2021 as a freshman. He played in 5 games in 2022 as a redshirt freshman, 5 games last year as a redshirt sophomore. And when you look at Garrett Nussmeier, it's very similar. Played in 4 games as a freshman, 7 as a sophomore, 7 as a junior. So he's played 19 games. So Garrett has played in a few more games, but just if you look at the cumulative statistics, Miller Moss with 92 career passing attempts. Garrett Nussmeier has 219 passing attempts. So if you're looking for a differential, that might be it, is that Garrett has had opportunities maybe to play a little bit more than Miller Moss, but both got their first opportunity to start in the bowl game. And Brian Kelly's right. They're offensively not going to be what they were with Caleb Williams, just because Miller Moss isn't going to be the improvisational quarterback that Caleb Williams is, that made him so dynamic and such a generational type college player. Similarly, Garrett Nussmeier isn't going to tuck and run for 1,100 yards like Jaden Daniels did. So even though you've got a lot of experience, a lot of veteran presence there in those guys, stylistically, they're going to be very different, which as a defense makes it difficult to prepare for when you really have one game. It's what they did in that bowl game. So more so, you might be looking at what the coaches do and how the coaches call plays in offense, more so than trying to scout that player. So maybe you look for when Lincoln Riley had a quarterback under center, be it at Texas Tech or at East Carolina or at Oklahoma, when it wasn't necessarily a quarterback as mobile as what you had with Caleb Williams, to maybe mirror more what it's going to look like. So these coaches go deep dive sometimes. Brian Kelly said on the flip side of it, when they were trying to scout Dan Lynn, they weren't looking at any of the USC players from a year ago. They were looking at UCLA film, where Dan Lynn came from, because that's what they're trying to look at schematically, because 10 of the 11 projected starters for USC are transfers who haven't played at USC. So it doesn't do you much good to scout USC film from a year ago, because I got to tell you anything. Similar with these 2 quarterbacks. Now, Brian Kelly was also asked about his guy, Garrett Nussmeier. And kind of the way the question was framed was, considering you're going into this high-profile opener, and LSU's lost 4 openers in a row, you go into this high-profile game, does it give you some comfort knowing that you got a guy that's been around for a long time under center? Yes,
I would say that, having a quarterback that has been in the system for the last couple of years, that knows what it looks like, what it's like to be in, an SEC battle, is certainly, and has played in a game against a pretty darn good defense. I think that those things make you feel a little bit more at ease going into these games. But openers are difficult, right? You practice so much, right? Look, spring practice, preseason practice. There's so much practice, and then you got to flip it to performance, where it's your first performance, and you have to execute at a high level in your opener. So I think every coach has that uneasiness in the opener because they don't know exactly what you're going to get when you flip that script. You hope that it's flawless execution. We're expecting much better execution with this group because of the maturity of the lot. And with Garrett, he's been in games. He's started games. He's played 4 quarters. So, again, there's a better sense. But, we've got to play a little bit more football.
As you listen to Brian Kelly give that answer, you can almost hear him say he wishes he had a tune-up game. That's what I read from it. Maybe you didn't, but he said, you expect flawless execution, but you don't really know until you go play. And it's one of those things where you wish you had the opportunity to go play to iron out whatever might not be flawless. The old adage is the biggest level of improvement is from week 1 to week 2. Well, we've seen that from LSU the past 4 years where they've lost this opener and found a way to kind of get themselves steady. Well, obviously the end of the Ozark, let's say the last 2 years, they've lost the opener and found a way under Brian Kelly to get themselves steady, but they weren't ready. Brian Kelly also made some comments, which we'll talk about maybe later in the week, about how this marquee opener may be going the way of the dodo bird, especially if we get to a point where the SEC schedule expands from 8 games to 9. If everybody isn't playing this caliber of opponent, then why would you? You're not going to voluntarily put yourself behind the 8 ball. I'm getting sidetracked a little bit here. That's another conversation for another day. But it is a conversation worth having, because if you enjoy these marquee openers, let's be honest, you enjoy them a lot when you win them. When you don't win them, you wonder, why are you opening with a game like this? And when you look around college football, there's only 5 games like this that are these marquee Power 4 non-conference matchups to open the season. So LSU is stepping out again in a precarious situation. Maybe the benefit for the Tigers, however, is you can lose a game now with the 12-team playoff, still have a chance to get in, but your margin for error shrinks. They'll need Garrett Nussmeier to be really good. SC will need Miller Moss to be really good if they're going to win the opener on Sunday out in Vegas. LSU is also going to need the defense to be much better. And Brian Kelly did give an assessment of how he thinks his defense is doing now that fall camp is over. We'll get to that next here as we wrap up Locked on LSU, your team every day. Want to tell you about a really cool new game. It's Ultimate College Football HC. If you haven't tried this new mobile game, you need to download it. It's an amazing simulation where you step into the shoes of a head coach and you lead your college football program to glory even. I mean, imagine being the head coach of LSU, where you recruit the roster, you hire the staff, you oversee the training camps, you handle the scholarships, you control every crucial detail of your program. It's all in your hands. So what you may love and I love about the game is also you get to call the plays. So the game, you get to actually, you can be Joe Sloan. You get to try to call the plays. Your strategy will determine the success or failure of your football team. So check it out. It's Ultimate College Football HC as in head coach. Ultimate College Football HC. It's completely free, by the way. It's completely free. And it has no ads. And it's 100% playable offline. So you can play on the go as you want, when you want, where you want. And of course, we got a special offer for you on Locked On LSU. So use the promo code Locked On CFB. That's all caps, Locked On CFB inside the game store and receive a free boost to the program. Make sure you take advantage of this perk. It'll get your team off to a strong start. So download the game, use ultimate-cfb.com. That's ultimate-cfb.com, or just look it up in the App Store on your phone. It's Ultimate College Football HC. Begin your coaching legacy today. And love telling you also about Ibotta, great partner here on Locked On LSU. Look, we all spend money. We all go shopping. We all buy things. All of us, literally all of us. None of us are exempt. And especially those of us who have families, you spend a lot of money as well. If it's going to the beach and you need sandals and sunscreen and snacks for the kids, or if, you're going to the ball game and you want to get ice and cold drinks, adult beverages, maybe gas, whatever it is. Look, if you're buying stuff, you need to use Ibotta, because Ibotta is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. It's easy. You can earn on hundreds of items, groceries, beauty supplies, toys. So you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. How about this? The average Ibotta user earns $256 a year. I mean, that could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip. That could be your flight potentially to Vegas to watch the Tigers play, or to a non-conference game or a conference game this year. Maybe the fancy dinner that you've been craving, your anniversary dinner, whatever it may be. Other apps that give you points, that don't amount to much, y'all. With Ibotta, you earn cash back that you can withdraw to your bank account, to PayPal, or in gift cards. Just simply add offers in the app, upload your receipt, and the money is yours. And right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta and using the code LOCKEDONCollege when you register. So go to the App Store, Google Play, download the free Ibotta app, and start earning cash back, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege, one word. Again, that's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store, and be sure to use the code LOCKEDONCollege. Well, we're all looking forward to the game on Sunday, and I think most of us are anxious, is that a fair way to put it, about what this defense is going to look like. They've overhauled the defensive staff. Blake Baker's in. Of course, Bo Davis, Corey Raymond's back, Jake Olsen in the secondary. We're all excited. I should mention Kevin Peoples, of course, at defensive end. They overhauled the entire defensive staff, and they should be better. The question is, how much better? Brian Kelly was asked that question on Monday. So you've gone through camp. How much better are you?
Look, this is all about, how do they look against, scripted plays and, limited opportunities. And certainly, I know that our football team and the guys that we have feel really good about where they're at. But you got to go test yourself, against somebody else to really be able to answer those questions. And then we'll be back here in a week, and we'll be able to answer a lot of questions about where we're at. I know going in that we're prepared defensively. Our guys are excited about playing for Blake. I know that they get the scheme very well. There's not a lot of confusion. There's not a lot of busts. There's guys that clearly understand what it is to play LSU football. And I'm excited to watch them play. And so I think that's half of it, right? Everybody has a high expectation. I expect them to play the level of football on defense that we've been accustomed to. And they'll get that opportunity on Sunday.
So I want to take that in a few pieces. You heard Brian Kelly say at the beginning of that bite that, they're having success in certain situations, but you have to go play a game. And he's right. Because when you're in fall camp, as much as you may try to simulate a game, you're still simulating situations. I've told you before, I've run through my practice notes. We got to go watch 11 on 11 in a goal line situation where the offense starts first and goal at the 4. And then they flip it over and the offense is starting 1st and 10 at their own 1. Okay. Well, you can have success in those situations, but even if you just extrapolate it to a game, that's like 1 drive or 2 drives. Can you do it over 4 quarters, over 60 minutes consistently? When you have to make the big play, can you make it? In actual football, not in scripted situations. That's what we don't know. Now, I will validate what Brian Kelly said. When he said they're excited to play for Blake Baker, undeniable. That is an absolute fact. Hook anybody up to a polygraph, and absolute fact. It is so discernible when you're out there on the practice field. And y'all know we got to see a dozen practices, and we got to see at least an hour every time we were out there. That defense plays with energy. They are excited. They love Blake Baker. He's an excitable guy. Now, if you go out and you stink, do they start to turn? Because it invalidates, maybe in a sense, all your work. But if you go out there and you have success, then you keep building upon that. You heard Brian Kelly say there's no confusion. There's no coverage bust. Great. They simplified this defense to make it easier to eliminate those plays. Awesome. Eliminate the coverage bust. Eliminate the guys holding their palms up in the air, pointing at their teammates. Simplify this defense. Have guys playing fast and free and see what you can maximize. I still believe right now that there is a big challenge. A big challenge defensively, because you got to face Lincoln Riley. And Lincoln Riley's offenses are just always good. There's no way around it. I mean, it doesn't matter if you go back to when he was at Texas Tech, when he was at East Carolina, when he was at Oklahoma, now at USC, his offenses are always good. They're always good. They move the ball and they score. So what I hope doesn't happen is when, not if, when USC has offensive success in this game, it's not demoralizing. It's not an here we go again type moment, because this defense has the potential to be really good. And something that I think will probably happen is SC is going to move the ball and get a lot of yards and score a lot of points, because it's Lincoln Riley. I just believe in Lincoln Riley as a play caller, as an offensive coach. And I think LSU's defense is going to be good this year. I think both those things can be true. And we're going to look back and say, man, they just played a really good offense with a really great coach, and they moved the ball and scored. But I think as the season goes along, LSU's defense will keep getting better and better and better. I don't think whatever happens in Las Vegas is a season-long indictment on this defense, good or bad, by the way. I think they've made progress because they are a confident bunch. They're an excited bunch. That was not the case a year ago. They're a disciplined bunch that's in the right position. That was not happening a year ago. Are they talented enough to be great and beat every team they play? Remains to be seen. But they're going to be dramatically improved from a year ago. That doesn't take much, but I do think they're going to be dramatically improved. How much? We'll start to find out on Sunday. Okay, y'all, I'm excited for it, man. We are almost to college football. Wheels up to Vegas on Thursday evening. Looking forward to that. We'll be there Friday for our radio shows. And, of course, we'll be bringing you Locked on LSU every single day. Hey, thanks for being here with us here. Thank you for making Locked on LSU your first listen. Now go check out Locked on College Football. From NIL deals to the never-ending conference realignment rumors, Spencer McLaughlin gets you ready for an exciting season on the gridiron. You can find the link to Locked on College Football in the description, so you don't even need to search. It's part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day. Okay, y'all, thanks so much for being here. If you're new, subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let a friend know. Hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. And let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here every single day for Locked on LSU, your team every day.